When you're looking for someone to help judge your instant replay, you hire the part-time henchman. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
Casey.
And Jesse.
We just had proof we are in different time zones. How are you guys doing after Thanksgiving?
Turkey sandwiches for days.
I do not envy you.
You know, I don't quite have that problem. We had a ham. We had a Thanksgiving ham.
Oh, no, we had tri-tip this time.
It's like there is no perfect answer here, is there?
No, I had a ham too, but I ended up feeding most of it to my cat.
Lucky cat.
He had a Thanksgiving.
I kind of had a weird Thanksgiving. On Thanksgiving Day, I went with my husband and his family to a Chinese restaurant because that's like one of the only things open. And we celebrated it early, which is the Sunday before, because both Will and I were supposed to be working both Thanksgiving and the day after. Well, I was working Thanksgiving, and we were both working Black Friday. And then his brother was in town, so we just did it early, and then we didn't have the leftovers because it was at his parents' house. So it was like a really weird un-Thanksgiving. There was no leftovers. It wasn't actually on Thanksgiving. What is life? This is retail.
You're actually making me a little bit jealous because my wife and I had a plan to just order Chinese. We didn't want to cook for Thanksgiving. We wanted to go totally bohemian and do something the kids would just kind of find funny so that everybody can just get on with their night without the usual like carb hangovers. And it turns out I live in the one section of Los Angeles where every Chinese restaurant is actually closed on Thanksgiving. You know, yeah, all of the better restaurants were also closed on Thanksgiving. It's like my only options for ordering out food would have been to DoorDash some fast food or to call Domino's, none of which sounds terribly interesting. So we actually ended up just minorly cooking. And I went to a website, I think it's called delish.com. They said they had a recipe for the best mashed potatoes ever. And, you know, I asked my wife, do we want to try this? And she just said, yeah, we'll put something together. So I went out, bought all the stuff, and it turns out those were the best mashed potatoes we've ever had.
Well, I'm glad they weren't false advertising.
Oh, it was pretty cool. I even microwaved some of them 3 days later, and they were still silky out of the microwave.
Oh, wow.
Ooh.
Silky.
Yeah, this was a really good recipe. I was really astonished.
Nice. Real potatoes or flakes?
A combination of russets and Yukon Golds.
Oh, okay.
You know, I couldn't find Yukon Golds because by the time I went out to Thanksgiving, it was like 10 a.m. on Thanksgiving Day. By the time I went out shopping, so I had to settle for some mini russet reds. But even then, the recipe worked perfectly. It kind of frightens me to find out what would happen if I had Yukon Golds that day. I know. I just laid down a whole lot of Irish Wikipedia there. How's everybody else doing?
Legit. I got hired for a new job today.
Nice.
Oh, really?
Yay!
So when do you jump on the stripper pole?
I'm very excited. I get to go pee in a cup tomorrow to make sure that I'm not a druggie. Because that's relevant.
Okay. So what do you do when you fail the test?
You know what? God, this is where me being the doofus straight edge the entire life really does come into play.
Well, you could be like me and be allergic to everything that most people smoke.
There you go.
Cop out.
I don't touch anything because I'm afraid I might like it.
Just go with coffee.
Yeah, I can't even do that.
I found I
It's
don't
more
like
socially-
coffee, so...
Well, it's more socially acceptable than crystal meth or anything.
You know, you say that, but you haven't seen me after I drink like half a Mountain Dew. Jesse knows what that's like. It's scary.
Just half?
Yeah, I get super engaged and really into what other people are doing, and then I can talk a mile a minute. If you think I talk fast here, oh god, no. I've heard myself after doing that, and I've told Jesse at some point, am I talking too fast? I think I'm talking too fast. Have you told me to shut? I think I need to shut up. I'll go shut up over here. Hey, can you hear me over here shutting up?
Walk away.
Stop!
That sounds like the first time I drank a Monster. I was like, what is happening? I'm shaking. I think I can see time.
Yeah, you'll never get that buzz again.
I can. I mean, if I chug one, I don't know.
So, yep. The subject of this week is X-Men Red Volume 1 by Marvel Comics, and we will get into that after the news of the week. We'll start off, though, with Marvel comic news. We will talk about what the House of Mouse is doing with their comic book company and what's coming in their future. It turns out that Marvel is doing something very similar to what DC did recently. They are not putting out giant-size anthologies necessarily, but they are putting out what they call milestones. Marvel is going to put out some, I guess you could say, extended trade paperbacks of major events in their comic book continuity history. And to start off, they've decided to go with one of their more recognizable teams that doesn't involve an A. The X-Men are the first examples of milestones. They're going to put out 3 volumes. Obviously, if you're talking about milestones in the X-Men, one of those has to be the Dark Phoenix saga.
Yeah.
Yes.
That is an absolute given. Although I was surprised by the other 2 picks, because they're very notable, but even, I would say most casual fans are not aware of the events of these 2 particularly.
Which ones?
The Fall of the Mutants, which...
I heard of that.
It's not necessarily a crossover event like a lot of them are. It's kind of the X-Men teams of the era individually going through some very rough times. This is the period where Douglas Ramsey was killed in the New Mutant series. It's the period where... this is the period where Angel was turned into Archangel as the Horseman of Death. And this is the period where the X-Men faked their death and went from Dallas to hide in the Australian outback.
They went through the Siege Perilous.
I know it was gifted to them by Roma. I don't remember if they stepped through it. I think 4 of them stepped through it eventually when the team was breaking down towards the end of the Outback era.
Because, I mean, that's what put Psylocke in Quanten's body. That's what Havoc became a magistrate for Genosha.
Yeah, that was the end of the Outback era. At the beginning, at the end of the Fall of the Mutants, they were gifted the Siege Perilous by Roma, but Roma enchanted them so they couldn't be viewed on any sort of electronic surveillance.
That's right.
And the third event is the Mutant Massacre. That predates the Fall of the Mutants by about 2 years. That's where Angel lost his wings in the Morlock tunnels, and a number of Morlocks were slaughtered by Mr. Sinister and his Marauders.
Mm-hmm.
So those are 3 very interesting points. Like I said, 2 of them are very likely not to be known by casual readers, so people may learn something upcoming. Anybody think it might be a coincidence that they're coming out with these X-Men milestones towards a point where Disney may own the media rights to these properties again?
I don't think it's a mistake.
I didn't say mistake. I'm saying coincidence. That's just something I thought about while we were talking about these heavy events. I know Kevin Feige, the guy who runs the Marvel Studios for Disney, has said that he has plans for X-Men, but he still refuses to engage them until the sale is finalized, hopefully early next year.
Mm-hmm.
I keep having to remind myself, though, that early next year basically means about a month and a half.
Yeah, that's right.
I mean, when you talk about next year, you also got to talk about the debut of the Captain Marvel movie in March, which now sounds very close.
Yay! I'm excited.
Well, I bring her up not because of the movie, but because of an upcoming storyline she's going to go through. It appears that sometime in the near future, Captain Marvel #2 specifically, the Isle of Manhattan is going to be isolated. I'm sorry, not Manhattan, Roosevelt Island in Manhattan. It's being turned into an apocalyptic wasteland that's been cut off from the rest of Earth. However, there's a few people stuck inside who are still trying to defend the populace. Captain Marvel's going to be in a sort of post-apocalyptic outfit. It sounds like you guys aren't as aware of this as I thought you would be. This was one of the news items from before Thanksgiving.
I don't know anything about it. It's
Well,
all news to me.
Okay.
I'm trying to figure out what the hell Roosevelt Island is.
You know what? That's an excellent question that I cannot answer because I do not know New York geography very well. But I sent you guys a link to the image of the design of Captain Marvel's Mad Max-esque outfit. As you can see, it's one of her more current uniforms basically held together by a bunch of belts and leather straps.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting.
It's not a bad idea. But also notable, though, is who she's palling around with in this issue. Because remember, I said she's not alone. She's stuck on Roosevelt Island with her best friend Jessica Drew.
Oh, cool.
And 2 other former Avengers. One is a Daredevil frenemy known as Echo, the woman who can replicate any move she sees, but she's deaf.
Yeah, like a Taskmaster clone.
The other one, though, is actually an Avenger by association. She was from the Avengers Academy, known as Hazmat.
Oh, I wonder about a good old hazmat.
Yeah, I've linked you guys to the cover image to Captain Marvel #2. It's textless, but you can see the three ladies with her, all in variations of their most current outfits, also appropriately
So,
Mad
I
Max.
mean, so refresh my memory. Are are they stuck on an island and they can't get off of it, and that's why they look like this, or
Yes.
are they in a...
According to the solicit, they're stuck on. Well, actually, let me just read it to you. Quote: The classic Fantastic Four villain Machismo has taken over Manhattan's Roosevelt Island and turned into an apocalyptic wasteland. When Captain Marvel ends up trapped there and cut off from the rest of the world, including any Avengers-shaped reinforcements, she'll need to build her own team out of allies, old and new. Spider-Woman, Hazmat, Echo, and a man known only as SOM, S-O-M, in order to start a revolution to free the island's civilian inhabitants. With that kind of backup, Machismo should be toast, but not everything is what it seems on this island, unquote.
Why
So-
is Jessica Drew looks like she's got cornrows and a spider written on her face?
Because she does.
I don't know if I like that a lot.
I
or
don't know.
not.
I don't know the details as to how long this story is going on to reach from point A to point B. The issue itself is the second issue of the upcoming Captain Marvel series. It's going to be written by Kelly Thompson, who's usually a very solid writer. The art is by Carmen Carnero. I'm not familiar with her work.
So figure out what Roosevelt Island is. It's a long island in the middle of the East River.
Huh.
Is it that weird island that everybody's banned from going on?
I have no idea.
Because I know there's one on there, and
Well,
it's got like a bunch of buildings on it, but no one's allowed on it.
I don't think you mean 3 Mile Island.
No. It's a place that they turn into like a bird sanctuary or something like that.
Yeah, I don't know anything
No,
about it.
it's populated.
Mm.
It's populated. It's right next to Upper East Side of Midtown.
Well, if you're interested in this story, Captain Marvel #1 is scheduled to come out January 9th. Issue #2, which we've been talking about, is scheduled to come out in February. Further on, a new creative team has been announced to follow up Charles Soule and his Death of Daredevil storyline. The new writer is going to be Chip Zdarsky, and the artist is going to be Marco Checchetto. Checchetto. The whole announcement was accompanied by an interesting teaser of Daredevil's mask on fire and the words underneath, "No fear." K-N-O-W. So
Okay.
with the Death of Daredevil storyline, I don't know if that means Daredevil has faked his death or if he's actually dead or if somebody else is wearing the mantle for the time being and this is somebody who knows fear. For all I know, it's somebody who knows fear and burns at the touch of the Man-Thing.
The man thing.
I know, strange reference, but it's true. Chip Zdarsky, I know him most from his work on Sex Criminals. That was one of his creator-owned properties over at Image Comics. Marco Checchetto, I don't know his stuff at all.
I never even heard of the fella.
Yeah. I don't see any statements by Zdarsky going along with the presser. All I can say is that this new era of Daredevil is supposed to start in February. I'm kind of curious to follow up on that. And once the whole Death of Daredevil storyline is done, I want to sit down and read that whole thing in one big chunk. Another Marvel character has gotten an expanded origin, and it's one that's been around so long, I'm kind of surprised he hasn't had one already. How many?
No, go ahead.
Well, how many people know the name Cletus Cassidy?
Oh,
shit.
God.
Yeah.
Okay, 3 for 3.
Kill me.
Cool. Cletus Cassidy is the villain known as Carnage in the Marvel Universe. Technically the first spawn of the Venom symbiote. The symbiote bonded to a, what's the right words for it? Serial killer who was already in prison by the time that he got the symbiote. And his origin is actually much creepier. It seems like it belongs in a horror show. He was born in the Ravencroft Institute, which is Marvel's version of Arkham Asylum. A whole lot of crazy people locked up. And because he was born without doctors necessarily aware of his birth, and when he was born, the umbilical cord was wrapped around his throat. So by the time doctors found him, he'd already been clinically dead for over 19 minutes. Somehow he was revived. It's not clear if the doctors did it or if it was something else. And apparently, while he was growing up, the child version of Cletus was in therapy. and he had mentioned several times that his first waking memories are waking up in a cage surrounded by things screaming at him.
Man, do I hate this character so much.
Yeah, the issue is, though, is because this is all being told by a third party, we're not sure if Cassidy means the his early memories of the Ravencroft Institute, or if somehow he remembers his time in hell from the small period he was dead early on.
Interesting.
Yeah, either way, these appear to be the formative memories that led to him doing several things as a child, including killing other children, burning down an orphanage, and so on.
Yeah, he was certifiably nuts.
Yeah.
Yeah, I a while back I made like a top 5 characters that I absolutely detest, and he's number 2.
Why? Is it the writing, or is it just the symbiote that you didn't like?
I hate the character. I hate the... Well, back in the 90s, they made this big deal about him. And the problem is, he's the kind of villain that you really do need to see a final fate to. He's just a real piece of shit. And the fact that he keeps coming back, to me, it feels like they're validating this character by bringing him back over and over and over. And he's just really, really a terrible piece of shit. So when Sentry took him up into space,
And
one,
ripped him in half.
and ripped him in half, 2, that should have been done and done. I was pleased. Of course, the person that ripped him in half is my number 1 most detested character. But god damn, Carnage just needs to fucking stop. And I hate it whenever they bring him into a fucking story. Sorry. I just realized I'm dropping a lot of F-bombs with this one, but damn, I hate that character so much.
Well, that's also something that was touched on in the recent Web of Venom, is that he keeps coming back from death. It's not clear as to whether or not he's made some kind of mystical deal, or if something just likes having an agent of chaos out in the universe, but something keeps bringing him back.
Yeah.
He's also...
I think that's what keeps bugging me about him.
He's also the focus of the resurrection of something that was introduced in the more recent pages of Venom, of the god of symbiotes, Null. Some worshippers of him are using Carnage as the center to try to resurrect this thing. So, I'll be curious to know what kind of reactions the next announcement gets, though, because it's a character that, as interesting of a premise as it is, I understand why some fans deride it. There's going to be there's going to be a new 3-issue miniseries revolving around Weapon H.
I don't know why that keeps going. That needs to just stop.
Well, this one is actually a bit more it's a bit more involved than you think it is. The 3-issue miniseries is going to be called Hulkverines, which is a fan name for Weapon H. For those who don't know, Weapon H is a military weapon that was made out of a soldier that attempted to bond the attributes and DNA of the Hulk and Wolverine, 2 of the most powerful entities in the Marvel terrestrial universe anyway. It's going to be written by Greg Pak, and it's going to have 2 regular series artists, Ario and Indito, and Guy Villanova. The thing that makes Hulkverines different, though, as a 3-issue miniseries, is that apparently, and separately, both Wolverine and the Hulk have learned of this thing that have their DNA, and separately, they're both hunting it down. So it appears Weapon H is going to be both of its progenitors, and no one is going to be happy in this situation.
Seems like to be just a basic knockdown slugfest between these 3.
I would think so.
I kind of figured that Weapon H was just going to be a one-note thing for Weapon X to beat the crap out of, and then that would be the end of it.
No, he's had his own series for a little while, and as far as I know, sales aren't necessarily a chart topper, but they are steady.
Yeah, I don't know.
You can never tell what people are going to latch onto. Who would have thought that a clone of Wolverine would turn out to be one of the more popular characters in their X-Men pantheon?
That's fair.
That's true.
And let alone some of the more popular Spider-Men are not necessarily Peter Parker. I mean, jeez.
I'm glad for that. I'm glad that some of the non-Peter Parker Spider titles are actually excelling, like Scarlet Spider. I really enjoy that. Of course, Peter David's writing it, so there you go.
I now have 2 stories that have to do with the X-Men, and both of which are upcoming storylines. So if you're not caught up with Uncanny X-Men yet, I apologize, but this is stuff that's happening. We've known for a little bit, thanks to the solicits and covers, that Nate Gray, the X-Man, is going to play some kind of big role in the upcoming issues of Uncanny. I've read the first 2 issues, and it does appear he's manipulating a lot of things behind the scenes. We also know that he's going to get his, his Horsemen of Salvation. Magneto, Blob, and, oh my god, I forgot the other 2. Angel. Magneto, Blob, Angel, and I forgot the 4th. Omega Red.
Oh, I thought it was Magneto.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I said him at the beginning.
Yeah, you did.
Okay, but anyway, it turns out this whole thing is getting a lot more in depth, because for a little while, there's going to be 6 new series revolving around what they call the Age of X-Men. If this sounds familiar, the last time they did this was called the Age of Apocalypse back in the 90s. There was an event that basically caused time to be rewritten, as if Xavier died before he could form the X-Men and everything was left to Magneto. And the world went to shite in this timeline, whereas Apocalypse took over the world and the X-Men were just fighting for survival. This appears to be the other direction of that. And the Age of X-Men is going to have 6 new series where it appears that mutants are helping in some kind of utopian fashion. First off, you have what's called the Marvelous X-Men, which appears to be a team comprised of Magneto, Storm, the X-Man himself, Nightcrawler, X-23, Jean Grey, a one-armed Colossus, and Nature Girl.
Oh, hey, Nature Girl.
Mind you, there's no synopsis to any of these, but there's already a lot of questions I have here. There's also going to be a title about the kids in the Xavier Institute, or at least kids learning to do whatever, called Next Gen, Nextgen. From the cover, I can see a number of characters, including several who haven't been wearing an X-Badge for quite a while, including Goldballs, Triage, Tempest, and Maggot.
Oh my god, Maggot's alive?
Yep. They're just some of a few students that you can see on this cover. The third miniseries, one X-Man in particular apparently is going to be a premier superhero on his own in addition to others, and that's the amazing Nightcrawler.
Oh, good.
Yay! He needs to have his time in the spotlight because he's awesome.
He's had a couple, but those series have not done well with fans, particularly.
Which is sad because the last series was really well drawn, and for the most part was written okay.
You know, I actually know the artist who did that, Todd Knock.
Oh, he's beautiful. I love his stuff.
Yeah, he's a fun guy to talk to also. He also does a lot of David Tennant as Doctor Who cosplays, but, you know.
Nice.
Another miniseries in the Age of X-Men is called The Extremists. And I can identify a number of characters here, but a few others or 2 of them are hard to ID only because the entire team is wearing black and gold uniforms. It's a bit unisex.
Oh, let me see it.
Psylocke, Blob, Iceman, and Jubilee are pretty easy to recognize on their own. There's a male and a young girl in there I'm having a little trouble sussing out. The young girl might be Armor. The male could be... I don't know. It could be... Frack, I forgot his name. The Frenchman.
I know that Armor is being involved in something.
I was going to say the man up top could be either North Star or Exodus, the way things are going. But it's just...
Wow.
There's too many... The features on them are too basic. It's hard to just pull apart who they are staring at this.
Yeah, you're definitely right. I mean that's Psylocke in the foreground. That's easy.
Yeah, Psylocke, Iceman, Blob, and Jubilee are easy. The other 2, I don't know. There's just not enough.
Wow, with the glasses, I'm almost thinking, nah, the glasses are purple. It doesn't make any sense. I was thinking of Beast's old girlfriend from Sword, Abigail Brand.
Oh yeah, but she's green-haired.
Yeah.
No, that's Jubilee. I'm positive of that one.
What, the one with the glasses, Jubilee, because of purple?
Yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
And,
so, what do you make of the other Asian girl then?
Could be Armor.
Armor's
like
a best
said.
guess because I saw Surge on the cover of Next Gen. But I'm still not
and
absolutely
Surge typically
certain.
has blue hair.
Not anymore. They've changed that recently to more of a white for some reason. I don't know if that's some kind of expansion of her powers and issues I didn't see. And before you ask if it's another infamous X-Man, let me go on to the next series here, which is called Prisoner X. It appears to be a few dissidents in the Age of X-Man. And of course, the central figure in this one, just like in Age of Apocalypse, is Bishop. But apparently with him, though, are the Beast, Trinary, Polaris, and the Honey Badger.
Oh man, I fucking love Honey Badger.
Yeah, but
Especially whoever is writing the old all new X-Men, which I know, not all new Wolverine, which I know is over now. Whoever writes Honey Badger the best.
The thing is, though, if you
Yes.
take a look at this cover, it doesn't have the same spirit. This quintet is angry and upset. And when I say prisoners, they are literal prisoners. It looks like they've been incarcerated somewhere.
Mm.
And
yep, that's definitely trinary.
yeah. And the last crew is the most curious to me because remember, this is the age of X-Men, right?
Mm-hmm.
If there's anyone I would have thought that is not involved in this universe, this would be it. The last miniseries is called Apocalypse and the Extracts.
Oh Jesus!
It is this
Okay.
very psychedelic hippy-dippy cover that has him in the middle, not in armor, but in some kind of giant A sweater. He looks like a negative Alvin from the Chipmunks.
No.
Also on this cover is an adult and suited Eye-Boy, Dazzler, who's wearing a beret and a miniskirt. She looks like Daphne from Scooby-Doo. It appears to be Oye from the younger X-Men, Kid Apocalypse. In this art, he looks almost like a monkey. And I'm not sure about the last one, but it looks like the woman who's been following around Magneto in some of his more recent series and exploits. I believe her name was Renee, but I don't recall.
Oh yeah, one of his last acolytes. I think I saw her on a different cover.
Not an acolyte. She's a human woman. She's been helping out Magneto in a more abstract sense. I get the feeling she has an ulterior motive, but it appears she just likes watching him work for some reason.
Weird.
Yeah, it is. So these are the 6 miniseries coming during the Age of X-Men. And another happening for the Uncanny X-Men series, as of issue number 12, it looks like 2 former members are returning to help fix things, and they're calling it the Last X-Men storyline. I don't know if this is because the other X-Men are tied up in the Age of X-Men, or if they have to deal with something that comes afterwards. But the 2 individuals who are on the cover for this are Logan, who you knew had to intersect the X-Men's universe at some point,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
and Scott Summers.
Yeah, isn't the Scott Summers outfit the way he's wearing is like a '90s outfit or something like that?
No, he's actually wearing his blue outfit, his Utopia outfit.
Oh, okay.
So it's not his 90s outfit, he just has his cowl down. He's wearing the one that had the giant gold bands. Actually, Utopia is the wrong word. He's wearing his Astonishing X-Men outfit.
Oh, the X visor.
No, that's the Uncanny one. The
Okay, just give us
Astonishing
a picture.
The Astonishing one was the Astonishing is the one from Joss Whedon, the one he brought together like right after Jean Grey had been put in the ground. He started seeing Emma Frost officially.
Oh, okay. The little wire, the small cabling and wire on it. I get it. I see what you're saying now.
So I don't know
Okay.
if this is another time lost Cyclops, because goodness knows Beast hasn't monkeyed around with time often enough lately. I also don't know if this is...
Salvador LaRocca is doing it. God, I love his stuff.
Yeah, he hasn't done an X-Men series since Nocturne was one of the team members.
Yeah, he wasn't he also the was it Javier Salteras that did Extreme X-Men? Remember he used to do the old Ghost Riders and the Extreme. I know Extreme X-Men was done in like using a different art style where it was like a lot of penciling and not a lot of inks.
Yeah, that was LaRocca's earliest work in the X-Men universe. The last time I remember him doing it was when Nightcrawler and Archangel were sharing leadership and Juggernaut was on their team.
Yeah, I remember those. Those are good art pieces. I love that stuff.
Yeah. So I don't know how long he's back. Last I heard, LaRocca was working on some DC stuff, but apparently that time has ended.
Yeah, I'm a big fan.
Another Marvel series that has officially been given the axe is one that's had some controversy lately, and that is Shadow of Vader, the Star Wars series that was supposed to be done by Chuck Wendig.
Mm-hmm.
And it's getting the axe because of Wendig's firing, or just because they're just saying screw it.
I think it's probably a little bit of both, honestly. This is over a month since Wendig was fired. I don't know if it's because of the controversy surrounding it or if they decided that now is not the right time for it. But either way, as of last week, Marvel officially pulled it from their lineup.
Well, that's disappointing.
It is. Darth Vader is one of those figures in Star Wars that everybody agrees is menacing, but when you really look at the movie timelines, you know almost nothing about him realistically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
The prequels filled in a large amount of that gap as to what happened to him in his formative years, but we still don't know much about his actual rise to power.
I would like to see more stuff about that. I remember the first Darth Vader series was excellent.
Mm-hmm. The first Darth Vader series that Marvel put out has gotten high marks, and not just from Star Wars fans. It's apparently an extremely well-written comic, and it helps fill in some of the gap between A New Hope and The Empire Strikes Back. How he regained his power after his demotion at the Emperor and his embarrassment over losing a Death Star. But we still don't know how in particular he got to that point after becoming a cyborg.
Yeah, I had one of my favorite lines. I'm surrounded by dead men.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
Marvel has also officially announced the War of the Realms. This is something that's been teased in Thor comics since the middle of the Jane Foster run as Thor. I don't know the details because apparently the entirety of the realms is at war with each other, which of course draws Midgard into it as one of the realms. And Thor is not fighting it by himself in an empty plain in the middle of whichever mythical realm you're thinking of. There was a single image that was released, and I can't send it to you because it was very small, but it does involve the entirety of the current Avengers, including the newest member, Blade. It also has Venom and Valkyrie on it, Freya, Odin himself, Luke Cage, Wolverine in his hat and shirt, so not in an X-Men outfit, Doctor Strange, and the Punisher. And Spider-Man.
Okay.
Really?
Yeah.
Interesting lineup.
Yeah.
Sounds like a Marvel Knights reunion.
Yeah. Oh, and Captain America on a Pegasus.
Shut
What?
up.
It's
I believe I was speaking English?
Shut up.
that's almost as good as Deadpool on a unicorn.
Look, I can't make that up. If I did, I'd be awful as a newscaster of any sort. I mean, I sent you the image. It's low res, but it's pretty clear standing or sitting behind Thor there on a winged horse is Captain America. Unless some ape stole his shield.
No, I believe it.
Oh,
Let's see what we
wow.
got here. Oh, look,
It's
Daredevil.
not loading.
Yeah.
Oh.
And Valkyrie and Ghost Rider
Yeah.
and Venom.
There's a very
Ooh.
small image off to the left that I can't identify only because it's a small image.
On the left?
Yeah, there's a small figure above the Punisher. I can recognize the skull barely on him, but there's somebody leaping with what appears to be a sword above him.
Yeah, and there's a cloak. I think that's a woman.
It
looks
seems...
like Jane Foster, but
I
No.
that's my first guess.
But she didn't use a sword. She had her hammer.
Maybe it's that British character Pendragon.
Possibly.
Sif? No.
Maybe.
but I mean-
Sif's colors are red and white.
Yeah, there's
But she has
black
a
in this
skirt,
one.
not pants.
Sif actually had a skirt too.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Sif had a skirt.
If you notice off to the right there, you can see at the top corner the Invisible Woman, the Iron Fist, and Okoye from the Dora Milaje.
Woot woot.
So who's that?
Representation.
Who's that little kid with the sword underneath the Iron Fist?
I can't recognize him, although there's an instinct that tells me that's something from the Asgardians of the Galaxy.
Mm.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because I don't even recognize the two characters beneath.
Yeah.
Like the one with I can see Valkyrie on the left, but who's that on the right of Panther? Because I don't recognize that woman at all.
That's Freya, the All-Mother.
Yeah.
Oh,
okay.
see, I don't know my Asgardians for shit.
Dude, I got to know her image real well when everybody was thinking she was Thor during the early part of Jane Foster.
Oh,
Last up in Marvel Comics, an unusual announcement, at least as far as I know. Marvel has announced a partnership with Riot Games. They're putting out a League of Legends comics. A League of Legends, sorry. They're
well,
kicking it.
They got some good characters.
Yeah, they're kicking it off with League of Legends Ash Warmother, an origin story of one of the first League of Legends champions characters. That's going to be released on digital platforms December 19th, followed by a graphic novel by Marvel and Riot released May of 2019. Let me see. It's going to be written by Odin Austin Schaefer, who's one of the writers for Riot Games himself. And the art's going to be by Nina Vakeva. It's a full-length comic series in the League of Legends universe. I'm actually kind of impressed by that. I'm not
We'll
a...
see how it goes.
Sorry?
I said we'll see where it goes then.
Yeah, I don't play League of Legends. I find the fan base to be way too toxic to get into. And
Yeah.
MOBA's never been my speed, but I always like good stories of lore. And I gotta admit, the art on this cover has me intrigued by itself. I sent it to you guys so you could take a look.
That's cool.
It's not bad at all. I don't know if I'd be a regular reader, but I'm more than interested to poke through it and find out more.
Maybe we could read it for the show.
Yeah, right?
We shall see.
Then we can all try it on.
Why does that sound dirty?
Or like a hat?
Wear it like a hat.
But you can leave your hat on.
No. That's not at all what was meant.
Not always helpful.
This is true.
We'll go from there into DC comic news. We will talk about the other major company in comics and what their stories and intellectual properties are up to now and in the near future. It turns out that Detective Comics, the story where Batman was born, or the series where Batman was born, is headed towards its big 1,000th issue in 2019. This will mark the 80th anniversary of Batman's debut, and the pages are the same. There will be an oversized issue for number 1000 featuring an original story by Peter J. Tomasi with art by Doug Mahnke. It's going to bring a new version of the Arkham Knight into the main DC continuity. I don't know what that means.
I do not know either.
The issue will also include original backup stories, brand new stories by some of Batman's most notorious creators, including Paul Dini, Neil Adams, Denny O'Neil, and Kelly Jones.
Ow.
Jeez, that's a lot of power.
Mm-hmm.
80 years of Batman. That's a lot of broken shins. Hey, it could have been worse. I could have said that's a lot of young boys left in his wake.
Oh my god, it just got worse.
Why did you make it worse?
Hey,
You
I
had
went
the
for
power not to make it worse.
I went for
and yet you made it
positivity
worse.
first, and all I heard was snickering. I thought I would try seeing what happens if I tried to hit a home run.
You need an Uncle Ben in your life. That's what you need.
Clearly.
Do you mean a Spider-Man Uncle Ben or a Spider-Kid Uncle Ben? Those are two very different things.
Oh god, I know. I'm
Ben
really glad
Rice?
they did that. Yeah, apparently in Spider-Kid, there's a character called Spider-Kid, and he's apparently what happens if Uncle Ben is a complete douchebag.
Oh.
Yeah.
It's so bad that version of Peter Parker, as young as he is, he refused to be called Peter because it has a connection to Ben. He wants to be called Charlie.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. He still won't detail what necessarily happened. There's been small hints throughout the Spider-Force miniseries, but nobody will actually vocalize it so far.
I just hope they don't kill anybody.
I think it's inevitable. I think Spider-Naught's going to die. There's a 50-50 chance Spider-Kid is going to die, finding his heroism towards the end. I'm pretty sure that Spider-Woman, the Scarlet Spider, and the Spider-Woman from Old Man Logan are going to make it.
I don't know. I think that Spider-Woman from Old Man Logan deserves to die.
I didn't say she's a great person, but she's one of those stir-the-pot characters that writers love to work with.
God, I hated her character. No, this is I hated her character in a proper, not like I hate her character as in Cletus Cassidy. But, yeah, she was a complete and utter bitch in Old Man Logan. She deserves something bad.
Well, actually, there's another character that's growing up rather forcibly, and that would be Jonathan Kent. For those that don't know, the son to Superman and Lois Lane was recently reunited with Clark Kent's father, Jor-El, and he agreed to go with Lois into space to learn more about his heritage. Lois said that things had been going so well, and she felt like a third wheel, that she went into hiding in Chicago and started writing a book, for reasons that are still kind of mysterious to me. Either way, though, it's been revealed that in upcoming issues of Superman, I believe it's Superman number 8 by Brian Michael Bendis, John is coming back, and he's not an adolescent anymore. He is definitely a teenager.
So I guess Super Sons is over?
Oh, I think that's kind of inevitable, because he did take a bit of a time jump here, and he has a brand new outfit to go with it, and apparently a new attitude as well.
Costumes. You know I like costumes. Let me see.
Yeah, well, he's coming back as a teenager, which implies hormones and anger, and this cover is full of that.
Oh, shoot.
Yeah.
Got some black elements from the old Superboy costumes.
Well,
I hope they don't do a Superboy Prime, because God, I hate Superboy Prime.
it has some reminiscent aspects of it, but it is more or less a grown-up version of the more recent Jonathan Kent. It's the same kind of jacket and cape combination that was the upper part of his costume, but obviously more Kryptonian armor's been added. And he's not wearing blue jeans and sneakers anymore. He's wearing some kind of armored pants and boots.
Yeah, fingerless gloves, though. Fingerless gloves.
It works in certain respects, and it's one of those cases where I'm willing to find out more about how this came about before I make any final decisions.
Right.
You know, it's like I'm one of the few people I know who thinks more of the New 52 version of Superman's armor rather than the old red trunks. Once it was explained to me what I was staring at, I was more into the armor than I was just, I'm wearing underwear outside my tights.
Trunks.
I've never been a fan of that, but that's all personal. For context, this is Superman number 8. It's supposed to be released on February 13th, 2019, and the solicit reads, quote, "The epic secrets of Superman continue to unfold. A few months in space with his paternal grandfather, Jor-El, changed John Kent forever. With John now seeking help from his father, the Man of Steel must learn about the war his son and his father fought together and set right the wrongs his father may have unleashed on other worlds. See what changed Superboy in such a radical way as the Unity Saga continues," unquote.
Ooh.
So, this is being written by Brian Michael Bendis. The art's by Ivan Reis, Joe Prado, and Brandon Peterson. That's a pretty good art set right there. I don't know. I like Brian Michael Bendis' work, and he's done some pretty good things trying to recontextualize Superman, but I always have trouble overcoming a mental block about Superman.
Yeah. I agree.
What's your issue with him, Joanna? Because I know mine.
There's a few different levels. On the first level, he seems more like a walking plot device than an actual fleshed out, like, classic Superman.
Mm-hmm.
When I was reading through as a kid, I was like, it just doesn't interest me. He's overpowered, and yeah, he's got a few fatal flaws that all of his enemies just happen to know all about, and happen to be able to get hands on the rarest thing on Earth in large quantities. Just happen to, because plot.
Okay.
It just, everything kind of, it was too easy.
Okay.
Too airtight. Plus, I mean, his personality, the way he was originally written, just doesn't translate into modern times.
Okay. I can agree with all of that. That's more or less the central problems I have with the character myself. It's also the times where he's written there trying to show off how powerful he is. I don't like how effortless the world is for him.
Right.
The recent issue I read where he was reuniting with Lois Lane after she came back to Earth, in between bouts of having sex, he heard something, flew out the window, stopped 3 different crimes, flew back into the bed, and, of course, disrobed before he did that. And then he just said, "So what were we talking about?" And I just kind of read that going, I don't know if you're showing off or not.
Yes.
Yeah, he
The answer
seems
is
really...
yes.
I was saying that just kind of bothers me on some level, that he's nonchalant about things, and then the smallest things will set him off. Like, what's up with red kryptonite? Anyway.
Oh, I'm not even going to get into that.
That was so stupid. Oh, it just bothers me, all the different colors of kryptonite that there are. No.
It's not as stupid and insulting as pink kryptonite, but yes, it is stupid.
Well, pre-crisis, Superman had a variety of kryptonites, including rainbow, white, gem, and gold, as well as, of course, the ones that you already know, which are blue, red, and green.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what pink did?
No, I forget what it would do.
Is it going to be really dumb?
Oh, it's super dumb.
Sexist.
Oh, yes. It turned him gay.
I knew it.
Yeah, I knew it.
It didn't appear often in DC, but it did appear.
So, funny thing,
Dumb.
pink used to be what they dressed boys in, and blue is what they dress girls in because it's a delicate color.
Mm-hmm.
Like, even maybe just 200 years ago. Not that long ago. And all kids wore, like, nightgowns as day play clothes. Like,
yes.
I don't know.
Young boys wore dresses.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, dressing gowns, yeah. But
before we get into a literal hate fest regarding the Man of Steel here, let's talk a little bit more about the crazy guy in Gotham. Did anybody
Which one?
read Detective Comics number 992?
No.
Nope.
Okay.
I don't read Batman.
All right. It apparently showed the full breadth of Batman's most recent version of The Outsiders. We have talked on and off about that when we found out that the new core of his team appeared to be more or less 6 individuals, including Black Lightning as the lead, Katana as his backup. It also included Orphan and the Signal, right?
Yeah.
Okay, well, in Detective Comics 992, a terrorist organization, Cobra, attacked several parts of Gotham in full force, to the point where Batman couldn't rely on his, haphazard help from the members of his family or the Robins or anything. He needed a concerted effort to fight this off, right? So he had Jefferson Pierce, the Black Lightning, call in the entirety of the current version of The Outsiders, which turned out to be a little more encompassing than I thought. Holding one section of town was Black Lightning and Katana. Holding a separate section of town was Cassandra Cain in her orphan outfit, being backed up by Barbara Gordon.
Huh.
And then in a separate section of town, the Signal was being assisted by somebody I thought Batman wouldn't work with for quite a while, and that is his cousin, Kathy Kane, the Batwoman. The two of them...
Well, yeah.
Well, the two have been on the out since Kathy decided to take a little bit more lethal of a tack in vigilantism and shot Clayface.
Well, you've got Batwoman popping up here as an asset in television territory, so you kind of got to bring her back into the fold.
Okay, but it's the last pair that actually confused me the most.
Okay.
At Robinson Park, 2 characters named Ted Carson and Bridget Pincolini.
Ted Carson, isn't that Metamorpho?
No. Ted Carson is Firefly.
What?
Oh.
Oh.
Yeah, and Bridget Pike is the other Firefly.
Oh, yeah, that's the screwed up Firefly. I remember her from
the
Gotham.
2 Fireflies actually held down another section of Gotham as part of the Outsiders, apparently. So I don't know if this is a full roster or if the concept of the Outsiders is more amorphous, picking up whomever they need to fit a particular situation.
Maybe there's a redemption streak for the Fireflies. I don't know.
I'm not entirely sure because apparently Bridget in particular helped Two-Face erase links to the death of Carl Twist.
Carl Twist?
Yeah, he was a genius who helped Cobra set up its foothold that led to this invasion.
Wow, I really don't read Batman.
I wasn't aware of all this myself. And this is not a knock, it's just always been personal. I have not found the character of Batman interesting growing up.
I haven't either, but I like the iconography he has, so I like the idea of Batman on other characters other than him, and that's the reason why I've enjoyed Cassandra Cain Batgirl, and I absolutely love Batwoman.
The iconography is fine, but Bruce Wayne as a character is so fundamentally broken from his trauma combined with successive writers just kind of upping the weird physical and mental perfection he has with multiple PhDs and the ability to lift 1,000 pounds and, multiple black belts in multiple forms of martial arts. I had a long conversation with Jesse and a couple other people about Batman, just trying to break it down, because the constant concept that fans like to talk about amongst each other is that if you had the money, anybody could be Batman. After our conversation, I was convinced that almost nobody could be Batman because nobody has the time to follow at least one of those areas of perfection, let alone all of them.
Yeah, well, I think Bruce as an organizer, and a hero maker is cool.
Mm-hmm.
And every once in a while, he'll have a really cool moment. But do I want to read his monthly dues, ins and outs? Nah, not really.
Wow, sounds like we're talking about the Robins again.
Oh, Jesus. Someone needs blacklist all of your comedic writings, or at least vet them better.
Well, I'll let you submit all complaints to fu@gmail.com.
Ah, Jesus. Are we 8 years old now?
No, 12. Let me see. We also have some...
13.
That means I can't be a Teen Titan. Speaking of which, a little bit more has been revealed as far as Young Justice. We know that team is going to involve Connor Kent, apparently, as well as Bart Allen and Tim Drake, more or less the trinity of male heroes when it comes to the second generation of DC Comics. Well, third generation, actually, of DC Comics. We now have a visual to go along with some of the newer members, including Wonder Girl, Teen Lantern, Amethyst, and Ginny Hex.
Jenny Hex, I remember her.
Yeah, she is the descendant of Jonah Hex. She apparently has one of his weapons, and I don't know how much of his knowledge as to hunting she's got. Teen Lantern, though, may be the most compelling story to me, because she is a young lady who figured out how to hack a Green Lantern ring so it works for her.
Interesting.
Yeah, I wouldn't think that was possible, because I know the Green Lanterns are some sort of cosmic technology, except I've never seen anything even coming close to circuitry in those things. They appear to be some kind of solid stone. So,
Yeah, that's what I always thought.
yeah, but somehow she got control of it.
I'm calling huge shenanigans on that.
Won't know till we see it. I mean, after all, everybody was excited about the Black Lanterns till we find out that those were all constructs.
True.
So,
But yeah,
I try to keep an open mind, because just about everything involving Green Lanterns is amorphous until somebody explains it. I do like the new design for Wonder Girl. I don't know if that's Cassie Sandsmark again, or if it's a new character.
let me see.
I believe I sent it. Yeah, it's already in the chat link.
Yeah, you're right. I see it now.
You know, Amethyst, yeah, it's pretty easy to recognize Amethyst. I don't think her powers have changed too much. Cassie Sandsmark is now sporting a Wonder Woman-style top, almost like a tank top, with a red jacket with gold accents and stars, a black skirt, and black leggings with gold accents on it.
I think that's Sarsmark. I think they're sticking with that on that.
I believe so, but I try not to prejudge until I actually see a name attached to it. But I do like the new design. As a matter of fact, I like the designs on this cover.
It is cool.
The whole group of them are passable to me. Whether or not I want to read Young Justice, I'm still undecided. But that's all personal. And Wonder Woman has a new ally as of issue number 58. That's one of the first issues by G. Willow Wilson, the creator of Kamala Khan. It's also being done by Kerry Nord, Mick Gray, Romulo Fajardo Jr., and Pat Brossow. It's already in stores. And Wonder Woman's new ally is via Resurrection, but yeah, it's the same person, technically. Ares, the god of war, wants to be her friend.
I'm suspicious.
Yes.
He was recently...
I'm suspicious.
Well, the gods in the DC universe, it's very difficult to kill them. When you kill them, they basically get resurrected.
Right.
Grail, Darkseid's daughter, recently struck down the god of war with the God Killer sword.
Nice.
At Ares' own demand. So when he was resurrected, apparently he was resurrected into a being that is a bit repentant regarding some of the things his prior selves have done and wants to try to make amends.
I think it's a ploy.
Except he's not doing it on his own. He wants to do it at Wonder Woman's behest.
Still skeptical. But
I didn't say I trusted it. I just said that she apparently has a new ally.
I'd read it just to find out what kind of trap it was.
I don't know. You'd have to read it on your own. Wonder Woman is probably the most interesting character of DC's Trinity, but she also has a power level that I'm just not comfortable with in general.
Yeah, well, she's one of my favorites, so.
Hey, to each their own. Last up in DC comic news, the solicits for Heroes in Crisis number 6, the big event going on right now, may have a clue as to who killed the characters in the Sanctuary. Sorry?
What do you got?
Well, I just want to recap real quick. For those who don't know, a number of DC characters have been killed at the Sanctuary, which was set up by DC's Trinity to help heroes who are basically having mental problems. It is not rehab. It's just a place where characters can unload their issues, talk about them honestly with automated attendants, and then the data is supposed to be instantly deleted. We found at the end of issue 2 that may not be the case because somebody is starting to upload snippets of characters in therapy online. But the solicit has a very specific wording which seems to exonerate one of the suspects in the matter. And so far, the two major suspects as to who killed them all were two of Sanctuary's most recent residents, Booster Gold and Harley Quinn, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the solicit for issue number 6. It's supposed to be on sale February 27th, 2019. Quote, get a deeper look into the inner workings of Sanctuary. When heroes visited the facility, they relieved their trauma through virtual reality, contending with the events that brought them there in the hope of reaching a meaningful resolution. That is, until the trauma took over and escalated these personal events into a full-blown crisis. Find out what pushed one of the superheroes over the edge and how it broke the machine. This special issue reunites Eisner Award-winning Mr. Miracle team of writer Tom King and artist Mitch Gerads, unquote. Did you catch the wording in there?
One of the residents?
No. Again, quote, find out what pushed one of these superheroes over the edge, unquote.
Oh.
Of the two suspects, only one of those is a superhero. The other one, the other one at best is an anti-hero.
Right.
And we had a discussion before our break where Harley Quinn is usually pretty open when she hurts or kills somebody. She brags about just about every single thing she does, but when it comes to the first 2 issues of Heroes in Crisis, she's been extremely adamant that she did not do it. Which also seemed rather curious to me that, her gal pal and former lover, Poison Ivy, is one of the dead.
Mm-hmm.
She might have done it and just not known it.
The thing is, though, she seems to have a pretty serious recall of everything, and Booster Gold is the one with a big memory gap.
God damn it, Booster. Don't fail me.
Well, in our discussion, we agreed that it seemed like Booster was involved. We just couldn't say for sure if he did it of his own accord, even if he did. The memory gap is... Yeah, the memory gap is a big curiosity. Let alone, now that Gold is on his own trying to figure out what happened, he's been reunited with Skeets, who last I saw was part of Bane's weird cabal to drive Bruce Wayne insane.
Was Skeets...
He was in that image with the Thomas Wayne Batman and a few other characters, the one that Holly was kneeling in front of. Skeets was there.
Yes, you're right.
So,
what's going on with that?
I don't know. It seems awfully weird that Skeets is there all of a sudden.
Yeah.
So, I can't explain it. Although I did tell the others that Heroes in Crisis is like, it's a lot like Batman White Knight. It's the kind of DC story I needed and didn't quite know how to vocalize it. It's been really good.
As far as I understand, they really haven't done anything with that scene with Holly since it happened, right?
No, they haven't really followed up on Bane's, torturing of Bruce Wayne at all since that was revealed after Catwoman left Bruce Wayne at the altar. Which still feels like the biggest case of storytelling blue balls in the history of comics to me. Hey, look, the ending to the whole Colossus and Kitty Pryde thing, I can live with, only because they've been will they, won't they so long, I no longer care. But this whole thing where it seems like Bruce Wayne might actually find happiness for the first time since Frank Miller wrote issues of Batman, I was kind of in on that idea. And that's not to say it won't happen later in Tom King's run, but I was really disappointed it didn't happen right there because we already had Catwoman living with everybody. She knew everybody's alter ego. She was in their business. She was riding in the Batmobile. All they needed to do was say, I do, and that's the part where they completely screwed this up.
Yeah, well, I mean, you can't have... Actually, I wrote a review about this, about the fact that you just can't have Batman happy. Because it will poison the well.
Not about poison the well, it just changes the story.
Yeah, and people reading Batman don't want a happy Batman.
I do. Maybe if he was happy, I might read it.
Maybe for a little while.
And I agree, if he was happy, I'd probably read it. But then again, you and I don't read Batman.
It's because he's unhappy.
He's just too much of a deus ex machina for me to be interested in. I have those same problems with Batman that Joanna has with Superman.
See, but Batman has real flaws, real emotional issues. Yeah, he broods and he's moody, and yeah, people around him die. But that kind of makes him...
Except it's virtually impossible for a single person to know all the studies of forensics, science, martial arts that he knows and be as strong as he is at his age.
He has money, he got tutors. because money is his superpower, like
Even-
Tony Stark's.
Yeah, even
Age is never a factor when it comes to superheroes apex training.
Because money.
Yeah. Or just, your character's own age.
I agree with Jesse. There's just not enough time in the day for him to do what he's supposedly the best at. All
even
the
with
time.
all the money in the damn world.
Yeah.
That's totally valid. That is totally valid, and there's a lot of question in my mind. A, how he learned it so quickly, how he mastered things so quickly.
Yeah, I mean,
Doesn't make sense.
Just a quick breakdown as to what the character does, and you got to think about time in a day. He masters multiple forms of martial arts, probably close to
Up
a
to
dozen.
50.
Yeah, up to 50 by this count. Multiple PhDs, at least a dozen, probably closer to 18 at this point. Then there is the technological innovation of at least designing all of this weird stuff he uses. Then there would be ordering the parts and probably assembly later on. And then, on top of all that, he has to have an alter ego, which still runs Wayne Enterprises, and he has to train multiple young people to do what he's already doing.
There's no way.
It's like the mugger chose the right parents to murder.
Yeah, basically, it's we have the same problem with Batman and DC that we had with Wolverine and Marvel, except Marvel at least told the joke that Wolverine's other power is multitasking.
Oh yeah, different titles.
So, I'm not trying to sit here and slam anybody's passion. It's just it's another one of my mental blocks when it comes to Batman. How in the frick are you doing all this?
Honestly, this could be done easy. He does have characters within his pantheon that can help with this issue. He can still be the detective. He can still be incredibly strong with a few martial arts under his belt. But you have everyone else do all the science shit and engineering. He has Lucius Fox at Enterprises.
Yeah, the thing is, though, it seems like everybody except for Lucius that has helped him out on the scientific side has basically started whining that they want to be in or back in a costume.
Mm-hmm.
To a man. So it's almost the same problem. It seems like everybody that helps him eventually wants to put on a bat, whether it's for their betterment. It's like Batwing, I think, has died twice. Every Robin he's had has died at least once.
No, Tim Drake hasn't died.
Not technically.
Batwing.
He had that near death in Detective Comics. I think he's lost Batwing at least once. Azrael, he's lost twice. Barbara Gordon hasn't died, but she hasn't been a Robin.
No, but she's had a rough time.
Oh, God, yes. We'll move into general comic and convention news. This is where we talk about comic books that are not Marvel or DC related, as well as conventions happening all around the world. Just before we went on break, we again covered that Stan Lee unfortunately passed away on November 12th. He was 95. We went through what Kevin Smith had to say about Stan Lee's passing. It turns out Smith was actually scheduled to see Lee the week he died. So, I don't quite know what to say about that, except another writer has decided to pen a farewell to Stan Lee, and that's George R.R. Martin.
Really?
Yes. The literary world's favorite serial killer.
Seriously.
I mean, sorry. George R.R. Martin has killed a lot of people with a pen. Martin posted online, quote, "I owe so much to Stan Lee. He was, in a sense, my first publisher, my first editor. Dear Stan and Jack, those were the first words of mine to ever see print. In the letter column of Fantastic Four number 20, as it happens. My first published LOC, a commentary on Fantastic Four number 17, compared Stan to Shakespeare. A little overblown, you say. Well, okay, I was 13. And yet, the comparison, when you think about it, is not entirely without merit. There were plays before Shakespeare, but the Bard's work revolutionized the theater, left it profoundly different from what it had been before. And Stan Lee did the same for comic books. I'd been reading comics through my childhood, but by the late 50s, I had started to drift away from them. I was buying fewer and fewer funny books, as we called them back then, and more science fiction and fantasy paperbacks. The DC comics that dominated the racks had become so formulaic and tired they were no longer holding my interest as they had when I was younger. I was outgrowing comics," unquote. It's an interesting take.
So while we're talking about Stan Lee, do we want to talk about Bill Maher?
I don't see why.
Fair enough.
Everybody's got their own opinions on things, and if you dig far enough, you always find somebody that's very negative on some kind of concept. You know, look at Richard Meyer.
Richard Meyer.
He's one of the central figures at Gamers Gators. He's the guy that complains that Captain Marvel's bust is shrinking, therefore he won't buy the book.
Oh, that piece of shit.
Yeah.
Okay.
He's also the guy that Ethan Van Sciver absolutely adores on Twitter.
Oh, God. We had this same mental struggle last time I was on this show.
Well, look, you asked, and I decided to expand and explain.
No, it's a valid point. I just keep forgetting this douchebag's name.
Look,
it's
I don't
your
like
brain trying to keep you from that trauma.
Yeah, I don't like remembering. I don't like remembering the guy either. But no matter how you slice it, I got to figure out who to stay away from. It turns out that comic books, although buys of printed issues are declining, October has a big upswing in it. In October, over 7 million units of issues in the top 300 comics list were sold. That's an increase of over 500,000 issues from September of this year.
Wow.
Whereas, how are the Spider-Geddon titles doing?
Unfortunately, the story on CBR.com didn't break down as to which were top 10. Oh, wait a sec. It had a chart as to gained sales, and the biggest gainer over this period was Wonder Woman.
Yay.
Huh.
Well, this probably has to do with G. Willow Wilson's involvement. Her changing storylines, or her changing companies, was a pretty big story when it happened.
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm kind of happy to see that, actually. I'm glad that she's having success when it comes to bringing attention to the character. Although it appears that a lot of bolstered sales in October may have to do with several one-shots and events going on in both companies, including Heroes in Crisis and Infinity War and its tie-ins.
Yeah, I don't think that Infinity War would actually be doing that much business, honestly. Nothing about it has really made me want to buy an issue.
I've read it, and the action inside is solid, although I'm still not seeing the lasting impact. It's one of those events that seems like it's going to be wished away.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons why I've stayed away, because nothing about it tells me that there's any level of permanence to it, like you said.
Well, there's a small amount, but it only affects particular corners, like the rebranding of the Guardians of the Galaxy into this new mob of cosmic-level players. That apparently is going to be a big shift, and I guess part of the fallout is when Rocket Raccoon joins the Avengers for their next event series, No Road Home.
Yeah, I really hope that Blade does get a good ride out of the Avengers appearances.
I don't know. I'm kind of interested in No Road Home because it includes Voyager, the Grandmaster's daughter. I'd like to see how she fits into this. But it's also kind of a clutched-together group of Avengers, and 3 of whom are going to have a very interesting relationship. Because the current Hulk, the horrific one, is on this team. And Rocket Raccoon is his favorite pal on the team, which seems dangerous to me.
Yeah.
But the Hulk's least favorite character on the team is Clint Barton, and I'm waiting to see what that confrontation looks like.
Hmm.
Do you suppose he remembers being killed by him?
That's my curiosity. I don't know.
Actually, I don't think he remembers, but I think he knows that Banner set him up to do it.
I think he's going to take some of that rather personally, because this Hulk is way too smart. And he's pretty much shown in his current series, The Immortal Hulk, he holds grudges.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know how that's going to go. I'm very curious to see how that shakes out. There will be a celebration for 25 years of Mike Mignola's creation. There will be a Hellboy Day on March 23rd, 2019. It was in March of 1994 was the first issue of Hellboy, Seed of Destruction. Dark Horse is going to mark the milestone by publishing a special edition of Seed of Destruction #1 with a new cover by creator Mike Mignola and Dave Stewart. It's going to be given away at participating comic shops. Not sold, given away. I can't believe it's been 25 years since Hellboy was introduced. I'm starting to feel old. Wait, isn't it next year that they're releasing that new Hellboy remake?
I don't know.
I would have to look that up. I do not know myself.
That's one I don't follow.
I'm only curious as a movie fan. I'm not sitting there screaming about it like a lot of other people are. There's a lot of people that are online, at least, that are just upset with the idea of this remake, and I don't have a strong opinion as to whether or not there's a remake. I just want to see a good film. There's also another series I'm interested in reading called Die from Image Comics. Basically, I'm trying to figure out the right way to describe it. It's being solicited as more or less a group of role-playing friends. They enjoyed things like D&D growing up. And now that they're all grown up, they found out that the fantasy world they were playing in may be real, and they're trying to figure out how to respond to it.
Whoops.
It's being written by Kieran Gillen. The art is by Stephanie Hans.
Are they implying that their actions changed what was going on?
I'm not entirely sure. It's coming out December 5th, so actually, wow, next week. It tells a story of, quote, a group of kids who get tricked and end up transported to a magical land but barely survive the experience. Now in their 40s, they must travel there once more, but the greatest challenge isn't some beholden creature. It's from within themselves, unquote. It's kind of like Jumanji with more swords and sorcery. I like the concept at the very least.
Yeah, that's interesting. However, I mean, if anyone's actually been in a D&D group, you don't always make the best decisions.
Yeah, but these were a group of young role players who actually got transported to a fantasy land, made it back, and something in their 40s kind of draws them back to it. You would kind of wonder what kind of people that kind of trauma would create.
Right, that sounds interesting.
Because I'm sure some of them would be in utter denial and probably self-medicating. Others would be in therapy and heavily medicated. You can always imagine one or two of them, though, was that weird person who decided to take up archery and swordsman skills just in case this happened again.
That would be me.
Oh,
That would be me.
There's also a new Firefly comic that came out in the past couple weeks.
Really?
Was it a continuation?
It was written by Greg Pak, one of the infamous Planet Hulk writers, and the art's by Dan McCade. It's set between the conclusion of the TV series and the film Serenity. So it's offering a chance to explore that timeline as to what happened when the characters were semi-separated and went their own ways. I would like to read it. I haven't seen a digital version of it yet. It's by Boom Studios with cooperation by 20th Century Fox.
What's it called? Is it just Firefly?
Just Firefly.
I'm writing that one down.
Yeah. If you can believe it, before he started writing it, Greg Pak had never actually seen the show.
What?
Yeah.
Who hasn't seen
Wow.
Firefly?
Yeah, according to an interview with IO9, he said, quote, Jeannie Schaefer, the editor, called me up and was like, Greg, I need you to write this book. And I was like, what do you mean? I haven't actually seen the show. Well, watch it! So I watched it and I
You can
loved it.
binge watch it in a weekend.
Well, it says
Yeah.
here, so I watched it and I loved it. You know, I really just got sucked in. I'd seen the movie, I'd really enjoyed that, but then going back and watching the show, she literally told me, just watch the pilot. So of course I watched the pilot. But then I had to watch all of the rest of it, you know? Over the course
Just
of
can't stop.
over the course of days, I just got totally pulled in by the world building. I grew up in Texas, and I was a sci-fi nerd, so the whole sci-fi western thing just totally grabbed me. But mostly, of course, it was the characters. This amazing group of characters. And it's this tremendous mix of humor and drama, and I just loved it. So I got hooked, unquote.
Oh, a
I
little
mean,
late,
who wouldn't?
but
It's
yeah,
amazing.
yeah.
Well, it's not like they put out enough of it where trying to binge watch the whole thing is arduous.
You know what? That's a sore subject with me, and I'm about to cry.
Well, there's been a couple of comic book continuations of Firefly, but this is the first time they've tried to fill in that time-telling gap between the series and the movie.
Right, and I'm interested in that gap.
There's also a new series by Aftershock Comics called Oberon. This is a series where the deposed king of fairies, named Oberon, wants his throne back, and he's not above using an unknowing child to do it. This is going to be done by artist Milos Slakovic, and the writer is Ryan Parrott. What do you want to say, Joanna?
No, I was just like, oh boy, Oberon.
Yeah, according to the writer, quote, Oberon tells a story of the legendary king of the fairies who, after being betrayed by his wife, Queen Titania, loses his crown and is banished to Earth. He obviously doesn't take it well, so he seeks Bonnie Blair, a 10-year-old promised child who is destined to one day save the universe from some ancient evil And, instead of protecting her like any good fairy might, Oberon proceeds to lie and manipulate her into using her gifts to help him reclaim his throne and get some good old-fashioned revenge, unquote. Parrot is...
Well, first of all, it's Titania.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, it's okay. I'm a big fan of Midsummer Night's Dream. Titania and Oberon have this feud. It's interesting that it's kind of getting its own little spotlight away from the Shakespearean world. But yeah.
Well,
he deserved what he got, so I have less than zero sympathy for him at all.
Well, it appears that Parrot's going to take this seriously, and before you think he's just some Johnny-come-lately who's working on someone else's story, Parrot is also a past writer on series including Batman, Star Trek, and Mighty Morphin Power Rangers. So
okay.
He has a history. Kelly Thompson, God, she is busy lately. Not only is she working on the X-Men series and a few other things for Marvel, she's also writing a new Sabrina the Teenage Witch miniseries. And
is it part of the Chilling, or is it...
No, actually, it's being written as a counterpoint to the Chilling. This is supposed to be a lighter series, more in the vein of the original Sabrina the Teenage Witch by Archie Comics. It's going to be a 5-issue miniseries in March, and it's going to avoid the horror tropes, so it can focus on more character elements as she moves to Greendale with her aunts and all the trials and turbulations of high school. I can't say that's unwanted. The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina is a fine series and everything, but it has created a bit of a rift between certain segments of fans.
Yeah, it wasn't my cup of tea.
I enjoyed it.
Well, what I mean, though, is there was an entire generation that kind of grew up with the idea of Sabrina being this light 60s fare, and then the TV show that was on, I think it was ABC for a very long time.
Mm-hmm.
And then you introduce Chilling, which, I grant you, it had all the solicits that explained what it was, but it was still a bit of culture shock to some of the older fans.
Yeah.
So, this isn't replacing anything, it's just a 5-issue mini, and maybe it's a cash grab, but it's also a chance for Archie Comics to reconnect with some people who may be disenfranchised by the newer tales.
That's fair.
Joanna, have you picked up the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Year 2 Deluxe Edition hardcover? I know, that was a lot of
I'm
words.
Sitting next to it. No, that's year 1. I do not have the year 2.
Okay, you're going to want it because it has an original story in it called Psychotic.
Is that the origins of, what is it, the Green Psycho Ranger?
Yes, it is the actual origin of the Green Psycho Ranger that was never told in any prior American Power Rangers TV show, as far as I know. It was written by
I'm excited.
It was written by Trey Moore and illustrated by French Carlamongo. There is a small synopsis here, and I haven't quite flipped through it because I'm not a Power Rangers fan. I just added it because I knew there would be fans out there, and I knew you would just go, "Oh my god."
Yeah, my husband and I were talking about it a couple days ago. He's like, "We need this now! We need this now!" I was like, "Okay, breathe. What do you need? What? Air? Food? What?" And he was telling me about it, and I'm definitely interested.
Yeah.
The Psycho Rangers are, they didn't get much airtime, but they're really interesting to the fandom.
Okay.
That I'm kind of still only about ankle deep into. I haven't really completely cannonballed into.
Okay.
So yeah, that'll be interesting.
All right. I will say that the Psycho Green was part of an actual Ranger squad that involved 6 colors, obviously.
Mm-hmm.
And it appears that there was some kind of rift that was made. I won't go into details because obviously you haven't read it. I know that I have a thing about spoilers, but this is still a pretty new story, and I don't want to step on any toes here. Mm-hmm. Especially since hardcovers are not bought at the same speed as regular issues. But it does appear to be an intensely personal tale from what I can see here. Any readers of manga in the house?
Not as much as I used to.
I only ask because there's a new free comic media streaming service for manga for iOS and Android called Comic Climax. It includes access to digital comics, video animation, and music soundtracks, and users are able to stream and discover comic media, and you can actually filter it by genre, creator, and title, and save comics to read offline, as well as find out more about the creators of your favorite series. Within Comic Climax,
cool.
Anyway. Again, this is supposedly a free comic media streaming service for iOS and Android. At launch, Comic Climax had comics such as Give My Regards to Blackjack, Vanguard Princess, Danity Kane, God Drug, Soul Ascendance, and original animation videos such as Damien, Breakups, and Short Age, as well as the official soundtrack to the video game Vanguard Princess, and a feature-length animated film called Paddock, among other things. Apparently, they partnered with Ego Manga. I may have to check this out just for the sake of curiosity later.
Yeah, maybe.
You never know what kind of interesting stories are out there that just aren't held by bigger companies.
Right.
And last up for general comic news, there is a holiday-appropriate series, but not necessarily one that's good for kids. It's also being done by Grant Morrison, one of the more legendary writers in DC Comics. And it's called Klaus. Klaus.
Ooh, I know this.
Yeah, it's a reimagining of jolly old Saint Nick, otherwise known as Santa Claus in certain parts of the world, as a Germanic Viking warrior fighting dragons.
I know this story.
Klaus officially began in 2015, and both Morrison and Dan Mora have been working on it very slowly. They've created yearly holiday specials for Klaus. In 2018, it's getting its own with Klaus and the Crying Snowman from Boom Studios. It's been described in IO9 as pretty much Santa Claus meets God of War.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, Klaus...
Somebody's got some time on their hands.
Well, it seems like an interesting story. Klaus and the Crying Snowman is seeing the immortal Klaus warrior doing battle with a whole pantheon of Nordic gods to rescue a crying snowman.
Ooh.
I'm guessing that may have something to
You
do
had
with
me at
Frosty.
Nordic.
It's a one-shot, so it's not like you'd have to buy a whole lot. It'd just be Klaus and the Crying Snowman. This is actually going to be released December 12th, so it's in time for you to show kids and ruin their idea of Christmas.
Completely.
I mean, there are darker origins too, so I mean.
I'm sure.
Oh, we just tell about the tale of Krampus.
Yeah, Krampus.
I love that guy.
He's basically a furry, demonic-looking thing that will take kids away in baskets to eat them if they're not good, and that's how kids, behave.
It's just kind of
in some
interesting.
parts of the world.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting though how we mix up the different old-fashioned tales, because Krampus in the original Germanic, he took away the worst kids, but the ones who just plain acted badly, he's the one who left coal in stockings for them to pick up on Christmas Day.
Mm-hmm. Or when he found them in the woods, he would hit them with a stick.
Yeah. That almost sounds like a skit in the
Look.
Kids of the Hall. A bunch of kids walking through a forest and just randomly whack stick across the ass.
Yeah.
Well, it was
reminds me
also
of
a
the
way.
Soup Trappers.
It was also a way for parents to keep kids out of the woods. Like Little Red Riding Hood. That was a stay out of the woods, kids. There's dangerous things out there.
It also sounds like a good way for kids to get away with child abuse. Whap! Krampus did it.
Hansel and Gretel was also a forest tale. God, I had the right words to say out of my face, and they just did not come out. A cautionary tale for the woods. That's what I meant to say.
Same roots and same part of the world of an origin as Krampus. So yeah.
According to old fairy tales, nothing good ever happens in the woods. Nothing.
Nope. Just eating children.
And that carried over once we found New Jersey. But we'll get into the subject of this week, and that is Marvel Comics X-Men Red Volume 1. It's also known as The Hate Machine if you check it out on Amazon.com. The writer of the entirety of it is Tom Taylor. The art is done by Mahmoud Asrar, with the exception of X-Men Red Annual Number 1, which is part of this volume. That art was done by Pascal Alix. The colors were done by Yves Sorvinka, Rain Barreto, and Chris Sotomayor. The letters were by VC's Corey Pettit, and I still would like to know what a VC's Corey Pettit is. That sounds complicated. This is the X-Men series that marks the return of Jean Grey to the Marvel Universe after a near decade and a half of her being dead, which in comics terms is pretty long.
It's twice as long as when she died on the moon.
Yeah.
Back in X-Men 137.
Although Bucky still holds the record when it comes to resurrections.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
kind of. I mean, he was retroactively killed in Avengers #4.
He was, but it still took about 4 decades before he actually appeared.
Okay, yeah, you got it. As soon as I started saying it, I
Mhm.
realized I was. That's still a lot of time.
But this particular volume of Marvel Comics starts out in a kind of an interesting way because instead of just beginning the series like most of them do, it started with X-Men Red Annual #1, which came out about 8 issues into X-Men Red's run. The reason for that is because the annual fills in the time between the Phoenix Resurrection miniseries and the beginning of X-Men Red. It's what Jean Grey did right after she reappeared on Earth. And while the art in this particular annual is far from my favorite, I mean,
No.
Oh God, I'm glad I'm not the only person that noticed that.
no, I mean Pascal Alex, his proportions are fine. They definitely look like human bodies, but somehow his faces always look like mannequins, like somebody just slapped a wig on something that didn't quite look human to begin with.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like
they
that
definitely.
one. When Gene's talking at one protester, and he looks like he's just stroked out right in front of her because his eyes have rolled back. Yeah.
Yeah, there was. I don't know, and the odd thing was, it wasn't the action that was the most awkward in this issue, which wasn't a lot. It was a lot of the extra normal things they did. The scene of Jean Grey and Rachel flying over Central Park. Neither of them looked like they had done this before.
Yeah, and Jean's hair looked like she was constantly, I've just gotten out of the shower, please forgive me, kind of state.
Well, she kind of flowed between just got out of the shower and heavy Vidal Sassoon.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of strange disconnects in this particular issue. Again, I was glad to find out the story because it laid out a lot of important elements going forward into X-Men Red and continuing. It just wasn't visually appealing.
It was not visually appealing. It was written by the same guy, and we might as well just start tackling Annual because it is definitely the elephant in the room. I did like how it was written because it brought back what I've always loved about X-Men titles, and that's the human factor.
Mm-hmm.
You know, when she's trying to reconnect with all these different people. And I did want to see how the X-Men all reacted to her when she came back to life. I've always wanted to see reactions like that, and I just did not get that with the
With Red, yeah.
with well, I mean, I didn't get it with the Phoenix Resurrection Jean Grey ending because it kind of just cut right off.
Mm-hmm.
So it was cool to see her all making all these connections, and I'm glad that she actually went out of her way to see people that were important, like Rachel and X-23. And I was like, that's cool, of course.
Well,
And I could go ahead.
I was going to say, I think an important benchmark here is to remember that she has been dead in real world terms for about 15 to 18 years. And think about what has changed since then. Cell phones have become ubiquitous and pretty much personal computers.
Yeah.
Cyclops and Wolverine were both alive when she died. Let me see. Rogue has
I
become.
thought she died in 2004. Or was it 2002?
It would have been closer to 2002. I don't believe I had my first child when she was dead. But also, if you think about it, the X-Men have changed a lot. The school has been destroyed and rebuilt since then and moved to Central Park. Rogue has become not just an Avenger, but an Avengers leader in the time she was gone. The Inhumans have become a major force in Manhattan and then massively scaled back.
Yeah, I mean, I liked all of the human elements that they threw in the annual. It was just that the art was atrocious.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was nice to see her reconnect with a lot of characters who had pretty much gotten used to life without her. And it was also nice to see her kind of flex her muscles for the first time since she was back to find out a little bit more about what she could do. The line of exposition there when she said that all this time the Phoenix has been holding her back because basically she's been afraid to fully use her powers while it was inhabiting her hadn't really struck home until that moment.
Yeah, I mean, it makes complete sense because when the Phoenix feeds off of emotion, and if she gets too hot, shit's gonna go crazy.
Yeah, and she's been a willing host of the Phoenix in addition to an unwilling one, and even a willing one has to be extremely careful. I mean, if you saw what happened during Avengers versus X-Men, you understand how haphazard of a story that is, or if you go all the way back to the Dark Phoenix saga before Claremont's story was retconned a couple times to make X Factor, I mean, that is the epitome of power corrupts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
Still one of my favorite runs. I love the Byrne Dark Phoenix issues.
yeah.
It's right up there with me with the Frank Miller Bullseye issues on Daredevil.
Yeah, I just wish the art was better. I mean, Rachel Gray is one of my favorite characters in comics because she has a lot of potential that nobody seems to have figured out how to have used since Alan Davis in in Excalibur.
Mm-hmm.
And on top of which, when Laura Kinney, who was Wolverine at the time, appeared in this, I don't know how you make a character that's lithe and relatively skinny look so boxy.
They really did. I don't know if the artist was trying to draw, if he was trying to lean towards real woman shaped with her, and maybe that's why we saw some of the shapes that we saw. Because I was seeing the same thing you were.
I don't know.
She seemed like a short, normal shaped woman of about 5'6", 5'5", or something like that.
Yeah, and if I could lead you to one particular panel that really kind of got my goat here, it was page 20 of the volume, the scene where Jean Grey is walking between statues on her way in to see Black Bolt in the Inhumans lair in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
The top half of her looks like she's been working out a lot. And I mean a lot.
Yeah.
But as soon as you look below the belt, it looks like she hasn't seen a sandwich in years.
Yeah, there were some proportion issues with this.
Arms are lopsided as well.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah. So I agree with the critique that it was a well-written story. It just wasn't well told visually, and that's considering some of the emotional moments, like when she got Black Bolt's apology for accidentally killing Cyclops with the Terrigen Mist, as well as her basically cleaning up his gravesite. Those were very important moments that were kind of glossed over, just staring at and thinking, why doesn't this look like people? Once you break into the regular volume, though, the art by Mahmoud Asrar, it's not perfect, but it's pretty darn good.
Certainly leagues better than what the annual gave us.
Yeah.
You're talking about the art and Red itself. Yeah, I thought there was. I did like it.
Well, I mean, the first couple pages almost had me kind of worried. The young girl sleeping, I don't know, she looked like a doll that had just kind of been dropped in a bed. But once you get about 3 or 4 pages in, it seemed like Asrar was quickly finding his footing with the story he wanted to tell and what kind of visual style he was going for.
Yeah, and I actually felt the emotional triggers of the story, which I usually don't in these. You read so many comic books, you start to kind of gloss over some of the background characters. But when the winged mutant got shot in 3, I think it was.
It was 3.
I felt that.
Yeah, it was a sad moment for a very hopeful character. But the other thing that was really apparent was the kind of tone that Kelly Thompson was going for early on here. And Thompson managed to strike a very delicate balance here, because this was a very action-packed volume, and a lot of the things that happened in it had a serious emotional weight. But somehow he found the perfect... I'm not sure if Kelly is a he or she, but either way, Thompson found a perfect balance for those moments of levity and humor that were extremely well hidden throughout the series. I mean, the very first scene when Nightcrawler teleports this young girl to their undersea headquarters, and the first thing she sees is the gaping maw of a shark and freaks out. I almost had to roll over laughing. Especially when Honey Badger just says, oh, that's a great white, he can't hurt you. I call him Harold. This poor girl she's nearly been killed by her mother and a mob of horrible people, and then she's teleported in front of a great white, and for these other characters in the room, it's Tuesday.
I love Honey Badger.
Yes.
Who doesn't?
She has some of the best lines.
They're
She's great.
so damn good. I find myself cutting and pasting like the frames that she's spoken and putting them up like on Facebook posts and shit. Which you saw, Joanna.
Well,
No, I was just saying, because I was thinking about her line from when she's jumping off the waterfall in Wakanda. She's like, "This is the best."
Little
Which
Exile
is
was awesome.
It was better to see this kind of a teenager than angsty.
Yeah.
I'm glad that they did not go the angsty teenager with that and just took somebody who's completely aware of what she is and embraces it and just wants to be a kid.
The thing
You
is,
know?
this series kind of took a different route when it comes to the formation of a super team, because often these teams coalesce around particular threats, and that includes X-Men lately. Although X-Men Red kind of formed backwards, because the first piece of world building you see isn't by Jean Grey, who should be the center figure here. It's actually by Laura Kinney, who's Wolverine at this time, and Honey Badger trying to chase down a car with an infant in it that was carjacked. But unfortunately, the infant had such an emotional response to, the weirdness of these carjackers taking the car from its mother, that it started to develop its mutant sonic scream extremely early in life.
Yeah, I like the skeletonization of the hand. That was cool.
Yeah.
I actually liked it more that these two characters, Wolverine and Honey Badger, heading for this car with their extended senses, start yelling amongst each other, "What is it, Wolverine? A weapon? I don't think so, Honey Badger." What?
Yeah.
Feels like a bad Batman, Golden Age Batman panel right there.
Yeah, Marvel, I find, has to do that a lot. I mean, beyond sometimes having to explain issues that have come past, they have to use names often. I noticed that Jean Grey used the full Honey Badger name as well a couple of times.
Yeah. But when Jean Grey does appear in this series, she appears to diffuse the situation pretty fast. But another thing became apparent in the very first issue here is that this Jean Grey, unlike just about every version that has come before, is not the damsel. I mean, You have a character that has an overriding amount of telepathic and telekinetic powers before the bonding with the cosmic being. But just about every way she was written, up until her death in New X-Men, she was the one who almost consistently needed to be saved by every other member of the team. There was always a strange imbalance in her writing.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, another thing that sets X-Men Red apart as a whole, really, is that it was a team that had a concept before it was a team. Jean Grey wants to create a better world, not by separating mutants, not by throwing them into the limelight like other leaders on varying sides of the issues. She wants to create a better world by showing the world that mutants are not an overriding threat. She wants everybody to live by basically creating a movement. And it's around this concept that a team slowly forms. I'm not used to that kind of pacing. It's refreshing and it was fun to read, but it was really surprising not to see the entirety of the team in some form in the first issue.
I have to say, though, because you brought up pacing, pacing is actually one of the things I've really enjoyed about these 5 issues, because I never got bored.
Mm-hmm.
When you're reading a comic, you do sometimes run into that problem where the writer is trying to tell you as much about the story as he possibly can, at the same time trying to keep the action going and trying to avoid the absolute stone wall that is the word wall. I love reading it too, but I just don't want to sit there and read 5 paragraphs to progress the story one frame.
Yeah,
well, a lot of that can be done with the art too.
Yeah, and the pacing of the story, especially when Sentinel X came in, and they were doing all of that exposition at the same time, Honey Badger's bitching, complaining about, are we there yet? And the Sentinel X is still getting to where they need to go. And it's like, that's smart. You're giving me the exposition, but you're still pushing the story forward. I don't feel weighed down by the page, and we're still getting to where we need to go. So I thought the pacing for all 5 of these issues was really, really good.
Well, Thompson also didn't lay out all of their cards on the table in the first issue like a lot of people do. I mean, I'm sure that the big 2 companies are in a hurry to establish new series so that they don't get bogged down by the rest of their catalog. They're looking for a foothold for other characters to take root. But, I mean, it's like the variant cover for issue number 1 showed the entirety of the team. So when you see Namor towards the end of the first issue, yeah, he's an ally of Jean Grey's, but he's not an X-Man. They took their time adding him in the 5th issue of the series. Just like you see on the cover a couple other characters, one who is brand new, Trinary, wasn't involved until issue 2 at the least, wasn't an X-Man really until issue 4. And then there was Gentle, who you saw in small cameos, but also didn't get involved until about issue 4. And then, on top of all that, the addition of Storm into this team was a complete surprise until she actually put on the uniform in issue 5.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah.
Storm's outfit looked really good.
Yeah, but I say
I
that
really liked
because
Storm's outfit.
yeah, but Storm wasn't in any of the solicits. She wasn't in any of the covers. So when she joined this team, I was surprised. And I've been reading X-Men since I've been reading comics.
I was really happy when Gambit showed up. He's one of my favorite from the original cast, I guess you could call it, of X-Men.
That's one of my moments of groans. And that's nothing against your likes, Joanna. I don't like the character.
Do you not like how his accent's written? Because I know that that's an issue with some people.
I don't like him because he's a largely directionless character. His job is to
You need to
basically
put on some damn clothes.
he basically Gambit basically shows up and is a visual amount of cool, and the design is good, the concept is good, but it seems like no writer has any idea what to do with him beyond smarmy remarks.
And I think that is
I
the
thought you were talking
biggest travesty, because he's such a cool character. He's got a great backstory. He's got a great life. And I mean, if you've read comics,
That's not to say that there can't be something built out of him. I just haven't seen anybody bother to try yet.
right?
I mean,
That's what I'm saying. They should try, because there's so much there. He's got this awesome, quirky personality, and he's got those quick fire retorts. It's awesome, and his accent's cool. But I know that personally, I know a few people that are turned off by the way that they try to write out his accent in dialogue. It just kind of puts them off, because he'll throw that was it Creole, Cajun? What is it?
Cajun.
Cajun. There we go.
Yeah.
I knew it was a C. So they'll try to throw that in there with a little like pseudo French too, and some people just don't have a feel for the accent. I get that, but it's part of his character. He needs some love. I think he needs some spotlight.
Okay. Hey, that's all fair. I mean, people like things that I don't like, and vice versa. I'm not a Gambit fan. Now, X-Men Red though has a lot of political undertones. That could be a turnoff to some people. And a lot of the politics has to do more with, I guess you could say, minority politics, since mutants are a general minority in the Marvel continuity, as well as some more or less modern real-world politics, and a lot of that has to do with their newest character, Trinary, who is an Indian technopath. And yes, I do mean Indian as in Middle Eastern, not slurs for natives born in the North American region. And I like the character, and I like what she's striving to. I do. I know there's always those people out there, the Richard Myers of the world, who will look at that and just say that Marvel's trying to influence politics. But the thing is, though, the characters can't exist in a bubble. At some point, the real world does intrude on most forms of art at some point, and an artist, whether a writer or a visual artist, is going to try to reflect that.
Right, and I think it's good that they do approach some issues, some cultural, some social issues going on, in such a way that it's reflective. And it's like, wow, wait a minute, what they're doing with these mutants is exactly what's going on here with these people. I mean, take it from anywhere from, immigration from South and Central America to how Americans treat Native Americans on their land. They take the land, they drill, they, pollute the water.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, this kind of reminds me of when we used to do the pop culture profiling.
Yeah, and that's the thing, though, is that this is one of those cases where comics can also present an ethical issue, because you have a few individuals with the abilities to affect real change, but there's the idea as to ethically, do those individuals have the right to, and then there's also the idea as to how would the world respond to those individuals, and that's something that X-Men Red, especially in the middle issues of the first volume, started to explore.
Right.
Trinary herself, by forcibly redistributing the wealth of the 25 richest Indians to the rest of the population, as well as attempting to forcibly close the wage gap by changing their digital pay rates via her abilities. While those are socially important issues, there is the real world question as to whether or not she had any right to.
Right, because that's stealing money.
Yes.
Yes.
It's cyber hacking. Yeah. So, I mean, I have to echo Honey Badger here. My new hero.
Yeah. And
she did something awesome, but there would be real world
Consequences.
repercussions. Yeah, exactly. And they would, there's ways to trace transactions online, and
Yeah.
who's to say that didn't cause problems for these women and put targets on their backs from these powerful rich men.
Mm-hmm.
That could be a problem all in itself.
Yeah. And
which maybe I'm the only one that thought of these kind of ripple effects, but when I was reading it, that's exactly what I was thinking.
no, and I agree with you. And again, this is, like I was saying, this is just one of those cases where real world politics and political issues were told through an artful medium, and it's just the circumstances had changed a bit by the addition of superpowers. Just like the response had changed from, okay, they need to arrest them, to launch the Sentinel. So it just, I always find it interesting when comic books bleed into the real world, and we get to see how different characters would respond to these particular stimulations or situations and stimulations. Unfortunately, in issue number 3 is when it's revealed full on, or how far Cassandra Nova has gone to her infiltration of the X-Men. I felt so bad for that poor kid she ran across, Kyle.
Yeah.
I know.
Well, I was like, no.
Yeah.
I didn't like that.
Yeah.
Although Cassandra Nova is definitely a villain that you want to hate.
Oh yeah, she's the anti-Xavier.
Yeah,
You
just
know.
an awful
Which
person.
says a lot, considering how much Xavier manipulated the X-Men to make them heroes anyway.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, that guy is cruel. So if you think about his evil twin sister, dear God, what is she capable of? Murder. And
For starters.
yeah, but her concept of the Sentinites, the nanite-sized sentinels that would reprogram humans into mutant hunters, that's another thing that felt like real-world politics to me. I mean, granted that in the real world, we change people's minds via social media campaigns and misinformation, but the Sentinite in comic book terms is kind of the same thing.
There's a heavy sci-fi bent to that.
Yeah. Yeah, and the real world mirrors and repercussions, again, came to mind, but, I'm smart enough to know that I'm reading a form of entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
So don't think I'm sitting here trying to say that X-Men Red is like a social justice warrior tirade or something. It's just entertainment.
Right, but it does raise some interesting questions, and I like reading things that make me think and make me think about how it applies to my life and real world and current events.
Yeah, you and I share that. I love it when something questions what I know and makes me ask questions. And X-Men Red does that in spades. But at the same time, it's still kind of hard to mistake the superhero genre for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, by the middle of issue 3, this team is mostly together. We had the first appearance of Gambit, who ended up at a anti-mutant protest in Louisiana that looks suspiciously like the one in Charlottesville in 2016.
Yes, with the torches, the tiki torches.
Yeah.
Jesus,
I mean-
tiki torches.
Yeah, when Gambit pulls one of those torches out of a man's hand, it says, "Mon Dieu, 2 garden torches for $12.99. So this is how they afforded the crowd scenes in Frankenstein?"
Yeah, that was a great line. I was chuckling and I said, "Oh, Remy." Anyway.
Yeah, and it almost appeared like a throwaway scene in the middle of issue 3 there, because it didn't seem to connect to anything else other than the general anti-mutant paranoia, which, quite frankly, has been pretty prolific in Marvel Comics since Giant Size X-Men #1.
Yeah.
Although Cassandra Nova using one of her Sentinites on Storm to make her go and destroy Wakanda, that's scary.
Yeah.
And Storm
That was
is
really cruel.
It is. I mean, the irony on so many different levels. It used to be her homeland when she was married to the Black Panther. It's another nation in Africa. She's seen as a goddess in most of Africa, and then the idea that she's supposed to destroy it and all mutants in it, even though she's been a leader of mutant revolutions in the past. It's just, there's so many ironies to it. It's not cool. But can I say that Storm is probably one of the more underutilized characters in the X-Men, only because her powers, if you really put thought into the breadth of control of weather, are so not just powerful, but violent. There's no way for an ethical being to use those without severely limiting themselves.
Right.
There's all kinds of kitschy ways that work in comic book, in comic books and cartoons and video games. But if a being with that kind of abilities ever really felt like cutting loose, you're talking genocide numbers here.
Yeah, easily.
Yeah, this is world-ending stuff.
Mm-hmm. So Storm always seems like one of those characters that, if they cut loose, could really F some stuff up, but she can't. The confrontation between several characters here, including Jean Grey and Storm, when the two of them were floating, staring at each other above Wakanda, I don't even know how to say it. That seemed like a human version of Godzilla and Kong about to square off and really do some damage.
And I have to say here, I was expecting a really nice showdown, but I was disappointed.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, it did come down to not really a desire to fight so much as it was Storm being pre-programmed.
Mm-hmm.
So once she figured out how to disrupt that programming, everything ran kind of short. But the scene of the youngest and newest X-Man in the block, Gentle, taking that full-force lightning bolt to his back and not dying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, they needed to do something with him. I remember reading about his write-up way back during the New Mutants days.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, what a worthless character.
Well, I liked him because he's strong, but he had a very serious limitation. I mean, even in X-Men Red, they said that if he's allowed to cut loose, he could go toe-to-toe with the Hulk, which is not a small feat.
No.
Right.
But the idea that the more he uses his power, the more pain it causes him, gives him a pretty interesting limiter without him being just restrained like Colossus is so often.
Right.
Yeah, but the whole thing, his weakness is so overwhelming that you really can't use it, especially not in a team book. So when I guess Gray mentioned, hey, listen, maybe we could work on that, I'm like, okay, cool. There's some potential with this character now. Maybe he can be, a big A-lister if they can at least knock down his fucking weakness a bit.
I agree with you. I just didn't like what they did late in the second volume because, spoilers, but it's already out. Basically, Gray needed him to do what he could do, and instead of training him to control his power, she reached into his mind and basically fixed it.
Oh, I did not know
Fixed it
that.
so that he doesn't feel pain?
Fixed it so that use of his powers does not fire his pain centers. So she
Oh.
didn't turn off his sensation. She just basically reached in there and, oh, there's the problem. Click!
So
So he can use the full breadth of his powers without causing himself tremendous pain.
So
Well,
the X-Men just got their Hulk.
wouldn't that still cause harm to him, even though he doesn't feel it?
Well, it's not that he doesn't feel pain, it's that his powers no longer cause him pain.
Yeah, the trigger is not there.
Yeah, his powers don't fire his pain centers anymore. She didn't turn off his pain centers, she just disconnected his powers from his pain center.
Not to be a wet blanket, but pain is the body's way of telling you that something's wrong.
Yeah,
So
again,
sometimes pain is useful. So if his powers were making him hurt, that means that there was something wrong with...
His powers that there is that link, that this link was necessary.
well,
Right.
not-
So in her disconnecting it, it's like searing the nerves to,
I think
your spine or something.
at this point, I think we're looking at an MST3K explanation that this is just a comic book.
well, no, I think there's a miscommunication here because you're assuming that now use of his powers pretty much overrides his sense of pain. In other words, that he feels none. It's not that case. It's more or less use of his powers was firing the pain center in his brain. Think of it like a throughway. Instead of doing that now, it doesn't fire off his pain centers. It's not that he can't feel pain, it's just that his powers do not cause pain anymore.
Right.
We don't have an Alpha Flight Janus situation. Ooh, reference.
Wow, look at you.
It's just, it's more like Rogue. Rogue's powers were considered just permanently on. It turns out they weren't on, they were just miswired. Gentle had the same problem. Now his powers are no longer miswired.
I get that.
God, I don't want this to run too long. We're already running up on 2 hours here.
Yeah.
But you get the premise of the story, more or less. And you know what? Let's just head and do the wrap-up here.
Okay.
Jesse, what you got?
I get what it was trying to do. I get what the story was trying to say, and it's not a story that really touches with me very well. But I say it's a good read. It's well paced. I enjoyed every minute of it. Every page of it. So I'll give it a rating. I would probably give it a Let's go with a solid 7.
Okay. Casey?
Wow, there's so many factors into this, and I wish all of them were just an overwhelming point to one end or another. I like the art. I like the pacing. I like the development of the humanity, although I do feel like they largely ignored Nightcrawler's character for all 6 of these issues.
Okay.
I mean, he was used, and he grew a beard, but his character development was absolutely flatline.
Okay.
I'm a big Nightcrawler fan, and I went into this hoping that I was going to get some of that, especially when Rachel Gray showed up, and then still nothing. So that suffered. This was largely a Jean Grey comic. Everybody else was really just kind of window dressing for what she was trying to do. It was a Jean Grey comic, guest starring Trinary, and with comic effects from Honey Badger, and occasionally Wolverine does something serious, but it's really a Jean Grey book. Going into the annual, wow, that artist really should not have been hired for that. But I can understand Marvel sometimes has to get these C-grade artists to do one-shots instead of like saying, hey, we're going to contract you to do 5-6 issues of X-Men Purple. No, we're just need you for this one issue. Well, I'm not going to do it. Okay, well, let's get D-grade dude over there. He'll do it. He'll do it for $800. I don't know. So I could see why it happened. I just hate it when it does. And this guy clearly doesn't need to be working in superhero comics at all. That's going to take a big chunk out of it. But I like the fact that the story still kept its pace in the annual. It still kept its sense of humanity in the annual. And, of course, it was easy because it's the same writer. That's cool.
Okay.
I'm going to give it a 6.
All right. Joanna?
Okay, so I agree with a lot of things that Casey said. The pacing was good, and I think from my experience with both Marvel and DC, Marvel has so much better pacing in their stories than DC. Maybe there's a few anomalies in the DC world, but Marvel knows how to pace a good story.
Mm-hmm.
The art was good with the exception of the annual, and I agree, I did not like the artwork. It was off-putting a little bit.
Okay.
I'm a big X-Men fan. I was reading X-Men and Spider-Man. Those were my 2 inlets to comics when I was young. So X-Men will always hold a very special place in my heart. Jean Grey, of most of them. Rogue and Storm,
Mm-hmm.
my 2 favorites. So, this is a bunch of nostalgia. It was a well-written story. And again, I love that Nightcrawler and Gambit were in there because they're some of my favorite X-Men also. I agree with Casey's, Kurt needs more love. He definitely does. He's a great character. He's got a lot of personality, and I feel that he was kind of eclipsed by what everything else was going on. I really love seeing Storm. She is an incredible person, very overpowering, powers-wise. Seeing T'Challa pop up, that's cool that they made a nod to them being married at one time.
Mm-hmm.
I totally ship them. I think that they should still be married, but that's my own personal. I would probably give this issue, the set of issues, probably a solid 8.
Okay. Well, no lie, I've been a long-term X-Men fan. When Transformers comics that Marvel was putting out were winding down, X-Men were the first thing I picked up. The first issue I bought on my own was the transition issue when Jim Lee took over at the end of the Outback Saga. So if that tells you anything about how long I've been doing this, it's frighteningly long. And X-Men Red, I think, was a necessary reframing of the X-Men and their general mission. That's one thing that the X-Men have lacked really over the last 5 to 8 years is pretty much a reason to exist because of the overriding appearance of other characters and teams as well as the rise of the Avengers in the Marvel Cinematic Era of comic book storytelling.
Right.
Red did a lot of things right, though. It did give Jean Grey's team a specific mission in trying to create a better world, not just for mutants, but for everybody. I understand why people have critiques about Jean Grey overshadowing everybody. However, she has been offline for such a very long time. It's not just a chance to reframe her abilities, it's a chance to reintroduce her to a whole generation of comic readers that may not realize the kind of effect she has on the other characters, as well as what she's capable of.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that she had so much spotlight time, I was really okay with, only because I had seen so many of the other characters in other comics, other issues, and other storylines in the last 20 years, and she was what needed to be told. The art was really good. There were a couple times where it was slipping, but again, Mahmoud Asrar had only just started this series, and I always give people like a good 5 to 6 issues to settle in. And by issue 5, he had really found his footing in what kind of story he wanted to tell with these characters. Yeah, the art in the annual was not my favorite. It was painful. I'm not sure what he was going for, but at the same time, it was still an important volume to tell the story as to what Jean Grey did right after her resurrection. Between that and the interactions between Wolverine, Honey Badger, and Namor and their differing personalities, actually, that was one of the things that struck me the most out of all the X-Men teams in recent memory. X-Men Red was one of the most diverse as far as personas. There were all kinds of characters in here, as well as several who hadn't just been growing up for the past 2 decades in the X-Mansion, wherever that was based. I would also give this a solid 8. This is a very good read. It's a good self-contained read.
Right.
Let's see. Next week I have for us Supergirl Being Super. This is the volume that pretty much retells Supergirl's origin via Mariko Tamaki, the lady that's been doing really good work with X-23 lately in Marvel Comics. So I'm very curious to see how this goes down with everybody, as well as just to sit down and read it myself. I have not done this. And then the week after that will be the first volume of Scott Pilgrim, colored. I found a volume that was in color for some reason.
Nice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So that's what we got for the next couple weeks. Thank you for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed everything. And because we were off for a week, yeah, there was a lot to discuss. Have a great one and enjoy the beginning of your holiday season. I am Jeremy.
I'm Joanna.
Casey.
And Jesse.
Take care, everybody. Enjoy and be kind.